Today, I'm going to be comparing my RTX 5080 that I've been using for the past month in my gaming PC to this RTX 4090. Before the 50 series came out, I actually had a 4090 Founders Edition in my gaming PC, which I sold before the 50 series because I was planning to get a 5090. But unfortunately, I just was never able to get a 5090. And now the prices are just sky high, over $3,000. And it's just not worth it, in my opinion. And also, it draws so much power that I would have to change my power supply as well, which is not something I want to do. So what I did was I settled for an RTX 5080. But it has been pretty surprising to me. It's been really solid in any VR game that I've thrown at it. It does have that limitation of 16 gigabytes of VRAM, but the performance overall actually feels very similar to my 4090. I almost don't see a difference. But really, that's only because I play flat games with a frame rate cap of 120, and VR games are always frame rate capped as well, usually with my Quest 3 at 90 hertz, or if I use my PSVR 2 at 120. So I don't really notice a difference per se because I'm not ever going above that 120. But what I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to be playing a few VR games that I usually play with my RTX 5080 that is overclocked to the max that I can overclock it to. And then I'm going to pop in the 4090 in my gaming PC, and we're going to play those same games in those same scenes and see with PSVR what the difference is between the GPU usage and if a particular GPU feels any different. I am going to be using my Quest 3 rather than the PSVR 2 because I can record on the Quest 3 itself and not take any performance away from the gaming PC. There is one advantage with the 5080 that I want to take a look at though, and that is the improved encoders, which should help out with any wireless VR setup. And to test this, I'm going to be using Virtual Desktop with the AV1 encoder, and I'll let you guys know if the 5080 feels any smoother, or there's less latency or less micro stuttering, or if it feels about the same with the RTX 4090. All right, here we have it, Virtual Desktop Streamer. We're going to be using the AV1 10-bit codec. That's the best codec you can use for wireless streaming. And we do have automatically adjust bitrate turned on, but it never goes below 200 megabits per second, so don't worry about that setting. We are going to be running at 120 hertz or FPS. However, I usually use 90 hertz because it's good enough for the Quest 3 and it gives a better video stream quality. However, just for the purposes of testing so we can push the GPUs, we are going to be using 120. For the resolution, we're going to be using Godlike. This is the highest resolution setting that we can use, and my RTX 5080 has never struggled with this setting, so we're going to be using Godlike. The first game I'm going to be playing is Hellsplit Arena. This is a very optimized VR game, and it's going to also allow us to load into the same arena on both GPUs so we can have a more fair comparison. Now, the reason why the FPS is going haywire right now is because I'm actually recording with the Quest 3. Don't worry about that. Every time I start recording with the Quest 3, it just goes crazy. So what you really want to look at is the GPU percentage that is being used right now. So right now it's around 58%, and that's at the native resolution. I did not upsample in the game yet. Just take a look at that and don't really worry about the latency or the frame rate. Here's a screenshot of what the latency and all that looks like with no recording. Okay, so now I'm just going to open the menu here, and we're going to go up in resolution until this thing basically just hits 100% usage, and we're going to compare that to the RTX 4090. So that bumped us up to around 66%. Let's go ahead and go back. Now we're at 74%. Okay, not too bad. 1.3. Now we're getting pretty close to 90%. I usually don't like to hover around this high because when you start fighting enemies and whatnot, you can start using your GPU quite a bit. All right, but I think we're still good. Let's go to 1.4. And now we're at like 90%, 92, 93. And I did play at 1.4. And it was actually going to 100%. I was getting quite a bit of stuttering. Okay, 1.5. Can it do 1.5? No, it cannot. Here we are at 97%, basically 100%, and we are maxed out. Okay, here's Blade and Sorcery. Now, interesting thing about this is that this game is a little bit heavier than Hellsplit Arena. At 100% resolution, we're at around 70%. So that's already pretty high. And When I first loaded up into this game, I was actually getting stuttering because I usually play at 90 hertz and 1.2 sampling, but at 120, it was just too much for the 5080. So as we can see here, we are getting up there in the GPU usage, even at native when you're trying to go for 120 frames per second. Now let's go ahead and pop the menu up, and we're going to just adjust the super sampling to 1.2 times, and doing just that already has us at around 100% GPU usage. Now we are playing with an MSAA of 4 times, but I think that's pretty necessary in this game because it looks really good. Okay, here's Metro Awakening. Now we're running at about 70% here at native resolution scale. If we increase it by a bar, we do get that GPU usage increase as well, and then going all the way up to 3 bars before the end, we see that we're already hitting maximum GPU usage pretty much. If we go to 2 bars before end, we are maxing out 100%. It's not even hitting 120. So if you wanted to play Metro Awakening at 120 on a Quest 3, you're gonna have to do it at native resolution or super sample 1.2 times. But honestly, that's already getting a little high up there. See how when I move around, it's already hitting the 90%. So I would actually honestly just either play a 90 hertz and super sample or 120 native resolution. All right, here with the 4090, very surprising results actually. With my Quest 3 trying to run at 120 frames per second without recording, I was playing a whole little match trying to combat people and everything. It was lagging like crazy. The encoding milliseconds number was going up all the way to 50 and 60. I was getting constant hitches, constant stutters. It was actually pretty unplayable at times. It was a bad experience. Also, I feel more lag in my movement versus, well, let me turn off temporal AA real quick. But even when I have it on FX AA, I feel more lag in my hands when I was moving my hands versus the 5080. The 5080 is definitely more responsive. I was just getting more micro stutters. Like if I move my hands and move my camera at the same time, I was getting like little jitters in the hands and stuff like that. So this actually reminds me of when I used to have my 4090, why I never could play a 120. Whenever I tried the 120 mode just to give it a shot, it was always lagging. I always thought it was my network, my router, or maybe the Quest 3 couldn't decode the footage fast enough. But no, it was actually because the encoder in the 4090 is just not good enough. With the 5080, it's just a perfectly smooth experience. And also, your hands feel way smoother as well. But anyways, other than that, let's look at the GPU percentage here. It is jumping around a whole lot because I'm recording at the same time. When I'm not recording, it's around 50%. And then if I super sample 1 2 3, let's go up to, I think it choked up when I was at 1.4, so we're about 87%, 78%, and maybe 1.5. All right, this is where it's kind of choking up. It's almost at 100% at times. It is jumping quite a bit. I'm gonna stop recording real quick just to see what it's like without any recording. All right, I stopped recording, and at times it was pretty much the same, around 90%, 94%. So I'm actually pretty surprised. Very similar to the 5080, just a little bit more powerful, but not really that big of a difference, to be honest, other than the VRAM amount. Blade sorcery is the same exact way. I am constantly getting the encoding milliseconds going up, and I'm getting hitches, and it's just lagging all over the place. It's crazy. Pretty much unplayable at 120. And let's look at the performance here. So it's around 50%. When I was just not recording, it was around that amount as well. So let's go ahead and put it up to the 1.2. This is what choked up the 5080. And we are able to hit that 1.2 pretty well. See, 80%. So it's definitely more powerful. You know, it's definitely more powerful. It's got a little bit more of that VRAM and everything. But if I do hit 1.5, it's at pretty much 100%. But honestly, not that big of a deal. I'm not gonna lie. The biggest performance difference here is if you are using a Quest or some type of wireless streaming VR headset, the 50 series is a lot better for that. It's actually insane how different it is. All right, here we have Metro Awakening. We're at around 70%, 76%, 78%, as you can see there. And let's go ahead and turn it up. Now we're hitting around 95%. That don't make no sense. 5080 was able to go all the way up here. All right, you know what? I'm gonna stop recording, see if there's any change. Wow, guys, no, actually there is not a change. It's still at 95%, even when I stop recording, as you can see from the screenshot. What it's telling me is that because the encoder is just not able to keep up, that's what I'm thinking. That's why its performance is regressed versus the 5080. That's insane. So actually, you can have better performance with the 5080 in VR games if you're playing with a Quest. All right, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to play just like a regular VR game, maybe Blade and Sorcery at 90 Hertz like I usually play with a Quest 3, and see if I notice any difference versus the 5080. Okay, so very interesting results. I just played through Hellsplit Arena with 90 Hertz, just playing it without any recording, without any overlays or anything like that, just like I would. And there was a very significant difference versus my 5080. A lot more micro stuttering, way more felt latency when I move my arms. There were also some tracking issues that I've never experienced with the 5080, such as like it just wasn't tracking my hands fast enough. So it was just lagging behind at times, especially if there was a lot of fast movement, stuff like that. And just overall, it just did not feel very smooth. It just felt like there was like just a lot of little micro stutters, you know what I mean? It just didn't feel like a nice, smooth gameplay experience like with the 5080. So this is actually really surprising because I bought the 4090 so I could get back the VR performance that I thought I lost when I got the 5080. I don't know what to do at this point, I'm not gonna lie. I think I might keep the 4090 and just kind of play around with it, see what's going on, and then make a decision later. But I play most of my games, VR games, on the PC through Virtual Desktop on my Quest 3. There are certain games where I'll hop on my PSVR 2, but most of the time I'm playing on my Quest 3, and the 5080 just provides me with an incredibly smooth experience, which I am not getting with my 4090. So I'm definitely gonna have to make some decisions here.